All right, are we live? Awesome, we're live. Happy Halloween, everyone. Yeah, and Feliz Dia de los Muertos to everybody who celebrates Day of the Dead as well. That's technically tomorrow. Yeah, so this was supposed to be last Thursday is when we were supposed to do this. But unfortunately, some things came up. My schedule changed a little bit, so we're going to be doing live streams on Tuesdays now. So yeah, today I figure we just kind of hang out. I'm working on arranging and orchestrating a spooky waltz at the moment. Let's see here, page view style. Let's do current page spread only. Yeah, it kind of works. Let's go to the top and yeah, I'll play this for you guys. You can see what I'm working on so far. And then, yeah, I'll explain a little bit my orchestration process. I'll give some pointers on what I'm doing and what I still need to get done. But you guys know how it works if you've been here before. These live streams are a chance for us to just communicate, to talk, and just kind of touch base and build a community, right? So if you have any questions about music, music theory, composing, or just anything in general, feel free to throw them in the comments below, and I'll be happy to address them. And hey, Jack, welcome, welcome. Glad you could make it. All right, let's listen to this from the top, shall we? Center this a little bit. So I like to orchestrate in Finale, which is a bit different from Cubase. It's a notation software. So it's not as useful for live streaming, but we'll see. The top line is the sketch I used while orchestrating. All right, awesome. So there we go. That's where the piece is currently. Still a lot of work that I need to get done on it, but I'm pretty happy for the sketching process. All right, so Jack, you asked some good questions. I said, which is faster for me to write in, Cubase or Finale? It really depends. So I use both for different stages of the composing process. Cubase, infinitely faster for me to sketch in. All right, because whether I'm improvising on the piano or more typical than not, I'm sketching something with the pencil tool. That I can just focus on getting my ideas down. I don't have to worry about formatting. I don't have to worry about working with notation. I can just very quickly sketch out chord progressions and a melody. As I said when we first started this piece, listening to it, let's see here. This top line, the melodies and the chord progressions, I wrote those in Cubase because they're very it's very easy for me to write stuff in Cubase. But when it comes to orchestration, 8 times out of 10, I would say I like to orchestrate everything in Finale. If just any kind of notation software. MuseScore is fine too. You don't need to spend a bunch of money on a notation software. And the reason why is because when I'm in Cubase, when I'm orchestrating stuff, I tend to get stuck on the production quality. I start worrying about balancing my sound libraries. I start worrying about getting the right performance out of my sound libraries. I end up just kind of focusing on detail work that I don't want to waste time on. Whereas with notation software, I don't have to worry about that. Especially, I run something, I have a plugin for Finale called Note Performer, which works, it gets a more realistic performance out of Finale, where it actually reads the sheet music, makes decisions on phrasing, stuff like that, to make it sound more realistic and more like actual players would read the music. And so I don't have to worry about the production side of things. I don't have to worry about trying to get realistic sounds on my sound libraries. I don't have to worry about making sure that the velocity is right for each note. I can just focus on the musical aspects of orchestrating and getting the instruments and playing the parts that I want. Then, once I'm done in Finale, then I go back to Cubase and I use the sheet music that I wrote down to actually start working on a MIDI mockup. And because the point with the notation software and a DAW is a notation software is really good at just kind of arranging and writing down the music itself, all right? But a digital audio workstation like Cubase or Logic or even something free like GarageBand, those are much more, they give you a lot more control over the actual sound, over the performance quality, the production quality, and stuff like that. So they're different tools. I use them for different reasons. But yeah, so at the moment, I'm actually going to show you guys the notes that I take on this. So anytime I'm working on an arrangement, I like to take notes and just basic stuff, like I have my structure. So I wrote an A theme in Cubase and a B theme in Cubase. And so my basic structure is I have A, B, B, A, B, B, A. Super simple. There's really nothing special about it. That's just the structure I chose to work with. And then I just kind of took some basic ideas of just kind of brainstorming how I wanted to approach arranging. And so I decided that each section, I want every section to build in size. All right, it build in size and add a layer or two. So, for example, when we first hear the theme A, it's the solo flute playing the melody and pizzicato strings on accompaniment. Then when we come into the repetition of A, I put the melody in the strings and I add some more accompanimental layers and stuff like the piano and xylophone doing some fun stuff to get more of a sound that I want to build in size, add more layers. But every time I hit a new theme, I bring it back down. So the first time we hear the B theme, it comes back down in size. Then it keeps building again, but when we switch to A, it comes back down in size again. And that's just kind of something that I felt like I wanted to do arrangement-wise. It's a nice, useful strategy. It helps keep things building and changing and interesting. And then the only other thing I decided I wanted to do is I wanted to have a fake out for the climax by making this seem like it was going to build into the climax, but then come back down in size. Before having the real climax around here, I think. I actually think I changed it to here. But these were just initial notes. And I put this down because I got a question. I actually think it was you, Jack, who asked the question on the YouTube channel. I don't think I responded to it. Sorry about that. But you asked about my process for arranging and orchestrating. And it changes a little bit here and there, but the basics of every single project I work on is I start out just by sketching an idea. So melody and chord progressions is what that usually looks like for me. Then what we have right now is I get the basic arrangement. I don't worry about balancing. I don't worry about making sure that all of the dynamics are proper or that I've got good transition. I don't worry about any of that. I just work on getting each of the layers for each section I want. So for section 1 here, having the melody and the flute, and then the pizzicato strings playing accompaniment. And then section 2, having the violins 1 and violin 2 playing the melody. And having the bassoons and tuba and basses on the bass line, and cello and violas playing pizzicato accompaniment, and then having a new layer, having the xylophone and the piano kind of playing around. So part 2 for me is that I don't worry about polishing anything. I just focus on getting the basic instruments playing the basic lines I want, and that's what that's the notes I have down here. Section 1, melody, solo flute, bass line. There we go. And with the chord. So yeah, I've got basic notes on what I have for each section, just the texture and instrumentation. As another reminder, texture is just the number and types of layers you have in your music. So for the texture in section 2 is melody, bass line, rhythmic chords, and an ostinato / kind of running figure. And so I've got my texture, the types of layers I have, and I have the instruments that are playing each layer. I try to get a basic balance for each section, but once I've got the entire piece mapped out like I do currently, there is a random empty space page down here. The next step I do, which is what I'm kind of working on now, is I revisit and I polish it. So I go through and I'll add percussion, and transitions are a big one. I'll make sure that I smooth out the transition from section to section. And oh yeah, I actually have the notes right here. I'll add accents here and there, so add additional instruments to emphasize certain notes. And of course, I still need to write an intro for the entire thing. I usually save the intro for last, just so I don't have to worry about it right off the bat. Plus, once I know what instruments I'm working with and what the general sound of the piece is, that gives me some better ideas of what to do intro-wise. But, yeah, fun stuff. Yeah, hope that was helpful. Looks like we have some more people. Happy Halloween, everybody. Tamashi, welcome. No worries, no worries. They don't expect you guys to remember every single stream I do. Jack, you love the F minor, G sharp diminished, A minor. I do too. I really like the sound that it creates. Let's see, I don't know. Is my keyboard going to play anything? Yeah, it is. Awesome. So that kind of, the F minor. Just, I love that kind of sound. So for the chord progression here, as you can see up here, the main theme goes A minor, F major, D minor, then E major. And then I do A minor, F major, G sharp diminished, and A minor. And then the melody, which you just heard, but it goes. And then it kind of repeats for the A section. And then after that, let's change this view style, shall we? Let's do column. We have our new theme. This is weird. I'm not as fluent with finale as I am with Cubase. Let's see. Oh yeah, then we have theme number 2, the B theme, which goes F major, E major, then G diminished again, and A minor, F major, E major, A minor, and then another A minor. And the melody is pretty simple. And yeah, that was technically the second half, but yeah. Awesome. Thank you very much. I'm glad you guys like it. So I'm not actually all that prepared for the live stream today. I didn't have any questions ahead of time. I'm just kind of working on it. So I figured I would just go through and I would keep working on this piece, get it where I want it to be. So we're going to swap to scroll view where we see all of the instruments I have prepped for this. And yeah, if you guys have questions, I'll just kind of explain everything I'm doing as I do it. If you guys have questions, put them in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer them. And they don't have to be about the waltz. This waltz was originally meant to be another tutorial that I would do on Wednesday, tomorrow. But as you can probably guess, I did not finish it in time. So I'll probably still release the tutorial, but it's going to be sometime in November, unfortunately. So what I just did in finale is I changed the play region. So we're just going to hear the first 8 measures. We're going to listen to this. Oops, probably make that 1 measure longer. But let's see here. So what do I still need to do for this piece? I need to think about adding percussion. I need to work on transitions. I need to work on accents. I need to write an intro. I like to focus on just one thing at a time. So let's focus on fixing transitions for now, shall we? So let's listen to the first 2 sections. Each section is 8 measures long. So we'll do the first 2 and let's listen to see how the transition happens. Alright, I don't think there are too many issues with that transition. Alright, awesome. So transition between sections 1 and 2 aren't that bad. And it really shouldn't be. It's just a natural growth. Now, sections 2 to 3 are probably going to be a bit rougher because we're changing the material. Let's see here. Tamashi X. What is the piece for? Oh, yeah, I just said I was writing this for a tutorial. Probably going to be releasing the tutorial down the line. I wish I'd been able to get it done on time. But, oh well. I've got a pretty busy schedule. As I mentioned in the last live stream, I moved recently to another city, so things have been a little hectic still. So I wasn't able to get the tutorial done on time, but I'm still going to release it either this week or next week sometime. But we'll see. And then when is the next live stream? I'm not sure, actually. I'm not sure. I'm probably going to do one week from today. My new streaming day is going to be Tuesdays now instead of Thursdays. So probably next Tuesday, 3 p.m. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a live feedback or a live lesson or a live Q&A. Those are each kind of 3 different things. If you've been here for a while, you know that the live feedback, I let people know a couple days ahead of time. I'm doing free feedback. They send in their pieces ahead of time. I listen to them live, and I give some feedback. Those are usually lots of fun. Live Q&A is just basically what we're doing right now. I work on something just that I need to work on, and then if people have questions, they can share their questions. And then a live lesson is, I think I've done like 20 of them, where basically I have someone request a topic, whether it's melody writing, whether it's orchestration, harmony, something like that. And I just teach a lesson like I do for my private students. I like to do that because it's an opportunity for me to offer free private lessons to people who maybe can't afford them, or just don't have the budget for it, or for whatever reason, and I just enjoy teaching. So let me know what you guys think. Which one do you want? Q&A, live lesson, or live feedback? And Tamashi, have you started singing practice? Tamashi, I don't need to practice. All right, I'm a good singer. But no, I get what you mean. Yes, so Tamashi is reminding me that I don't even know. You still haven't told me what video it was in or what live stream, but there was a live stream where I was asked if people wanted to hear my singing voice, because technically I was a singing major at Berkeley. I applied for film composer, but you have to apply with an instrument. So my audition was for vocal performance, and that's what I got in with. I haven't done any actual singing on the channel before, and I said that once I hit 20,000 subscribers, I would consider doing a cover or something. So I haven't started practicing yet because I am getting close to 20,000, but I have started making a short list of what songs I would do. The song I did to audition for Berkeley was Quizás, 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 the Andrea Bocelli kind of cover of that. And so I might do something like that. I might do something else. I was thinking about doing maybe Flying by Cody Fry, which is an amazing kind of orchestral arrangement. I thought maybe I would do an orchestral arrangement with sound libraries and sing to it, but I couldn't find the sheet music for that anywhere, so we don't know. I've got a short list of songs that I prepped, but yes, I am thinking about it, Tamashi. Thank you for the reminder. Ed, welcome. And Raven, I don't know if you explained this in the tutorial, but how can we choose chord progressions that feel spooky? Awesome. So here's what I want to say about chord progressions. I'm sorry, I've got a squeaky chair today. Chord progressions can only get you so far, emotion-wise. So there's this big kind of misconception that chord progressions are the secret behind emotion in music, and that's technically partially true. So chord progressions are incredibly powerful. They are some of the most powerful tools that you will have for emotions. But what they really do is they help set something called valence. So as I went to school to be a therapist. I got my undergrad was in psychology. My master's degree was in social work. And so that was before I switched to music. There are a lot of models that we have in the world of therapy for understanding emotions. And one of the older ones that's a little outdated in terms of therapy practices, but great for us is called the circumplex model of effect. And it basically says that every emotion can be described by a combination of how dark or bright it is and how high energy it is. The specific terms are used are valence and arousal. So how pleasant or unpleasant the emotion is, that's valence, and how intensely they are experienced, being the arousal level. Those work really well for us because those are things that music has a lot of control over. So if you want to portray any emotion with music, it comes down to finding three things. The first is the valence. How do you set the correct amount of darkness or brightness in your music versus to set the music? If you've got a dark emotion, you want a dark sound for your music. And the most powerful tool you have are chord progressions. But those can only get you so far. So to create a spooky chord progression, all you really need is a minor chord progression. All right? Things like that, it's good enough. After that, the other two elements that take the valence into an actual emotion is size and energy. So energy meaning how much movement or how much, just basically how much movement you have in your music, and size being basically how large scale is your music. So those are the three, like how large scale, so it can be dynamics, it can be size of your instrumentation, stuff like that. Those three elements are going to be what's most important for creating the overall mood or kind of emotion of your music. So if you're thinking about something like spooky, spooky is not really an emotion, but you want to think what kind of emotion do you want to create for your audience to set the stage for kind of spookiness, and that would be those three things. You probably want a dark valence, you probably want a lot of movement, and the size can go up and down depending on how intensely you want it. But what really has the biggest impact on spookiness is going to be your instrumentation, and this is something called the last piece of the puzzle. So if valence, size, and movement help kind of create the mood for an emotion, the last piece of the puzzle is something called gesture, or these musical metaphors that you work with. And that can be just any idea you get to help portray an idea. So whether you think, I want to use trumpets for this, or I want to use a sweeping string melody, any of these kind of things that you think just help portray the emotion, that's great. And this is a super fast-paced thing. I hope I'm not confusing anybody. But long story short, I'm going to speed things up unless you guys want to hear more about this. Long story short, to get spooky music, start with a minor key chord progression, and then you're going to want to work with woodwinds. You're going to want to work with pizzicato strings here and there. You're going to want to work with tremolo strings. In fact, I'm going to write this down for you guys. I like to write things down so people can follow around. So, the secret to spooky music. All right, start with a minor key chord progression. And it can be minor key, minor modes, doesn't matter, just use minor chords for the most part. Next, focus on your instrumentation. So common instruments for spooky music: plucked strings, also known as pizzicato. Xylophone. Xylophone is a big one. Xylophone is very commonly used because it's like skeletons, right? Xylophone. Tubular bells, which is something I haven't added yet, but that's very common. Harp is very common, especially I will say harp glissandi. So when the harp is moving up and down, up just scales and arpeggios and stuff like that. So plucked strings, xylophone, tubular bells, harp, tremolo strings. That's when they make kind of. I'll show an example. So the where they go back and forth. I don't know if that's helpful at all. But yeah, they bow back and forth very rapidly over the same note. That's the tremolo. It helps create a lot of tension. So plucked strings, xylophone, tubular bells, harp, tremolo strings, woodwinds, especially oboes and English horns. And then one other thing we're going to say, interesting techniques. I'm going to say chordal melodies, or planing is another term used for that. So let's actually go through, shall we? Let's kind of discuss each of these strategies and show how they're used. So let's talk about xylophone first. So in section 2, that's where I have it show up. So we have the xylophone. Let's go to page view so it's easier. Section 2, we have the xylophone playing just kind of this quick running scale. Has a little bit of movement. So a real easy way to get spooky sounds with the xylophone, have it do running scales up and down. You can imagine like a skeleton running all over the place. You can have it double the melody, especially with woodwinds, or you can have it play its own counter melody. Any kind of use. The xylophone is key. Lots of spooky music and waltzes will have it. And another one that I just remembered, which I did not use, harpsichord is also very common. It's another very quick, dry instrument, meaning that you pluck a note and it immediately decays. There's not sustain. And it's just also very old and commonly associated with kind of spooky sounds, thanks to movies like Addams Family. Let's see here. Any questions? I just feel like I'm falling behind. Let's see. Jack Lane, as someone who only recently watched The Sound of Music, Edelweiss? I'm not singing Edelweiss, Jack. No, I'm not sure. Nothing from The Sound of Music. Good movie, love the musical, but no, that's not the kind of music I sing. But thank you. Not my style, I should say. Tamashi, I'm currently making a video in which I am putting all of the clips. I have asked you to sing in your responses. Trust me, oh yeah. All right. Thank you, Tamashi. I am looking forward to it. Raven, your answer really helps me out because I always wasted so much time thinking about chord progressions. No worries. My pleasure. I'm really glad to help. Yes, chord progressions are useful. They are very important, but only so much is setting the original vibe. That's something I've come to terms with as well. I would say the way I write my chord progressions, I start with something super simple, something basic that I can use to write a melody on top of. Just something that I think fits the emotion well in terms of creating the right kind of valence. And then if I want something more complex, then I will reharmonize the melody using various different techniques and such. I actually had a lesson yesterday where I was teaching a new student how to write for big band jazz, for like movies like James Bond, The Incredibles, stuff like that. And a lot of that style has to do with reharmonizing things. You start with a simple chord progression and a melody, and then you can reharmonize by adding extensions to your chords. You can rewrite the melody by adding more syncopation. And then the biggest one is something called like reharmonizing your approach tones. So any note that's not part of the underlying harmony, you give its own chord. There's a bunch of stuff that we can go into. That would be just a topic for a whole nother lesson. But yeah, I would say don't worry about getting bogged down on chord progressions right off the bat. Let's see here. And then E-Just 321, E-Just 123. Would you maybe provide a quick analysis of Zimmer, the well, if it fits your explanation of how to produce spooky music really well? Let's see here. So, analysis of Zimmer, the well. Is that a piece, or is that is that a movie? Was there a specific piece? I'd be happy to. The tricky part is that for some reason when I get on YouTube while live streaming, it won't share the audio with you guys. So it makes it more complicated to try and do stuff. But I wouldn't be against it. Yeah, if that's a movie, let me know if there's a specific piece you want. If it's a specific piece or something, let me know. I'd be happy to give it a listen and just kind of share it. But for now, let's kind of double down on some of this stuff. So I'm talking about all of these instruments. That these are a great way to kind of get started. Tubular bells, I haven't added those to that, but what I want to talk about next is chordal melodies or planing, and this is super, super common in spooky music. So I actually have an example of chordal melodies, a chordal melody in section 3. So let's see, it was 16, then 25. Let's listen to section number 3, and I'll point out what I'm talking about. All right, so the melody for this piece goes, for this section. And in this section, I have given the melody to the oboe and the clarinet. If we solo these instruments, you're going to notice something interesting about the note choice and the arrangement of these two. So they're not actually playing the same thing. They're playing the same identical rhythm. But what's happening is the oboe. The oboe is the instrument actually playing the melody. But the clarinet, which this is a B-flat clarinet, but I have everything in... if you can read music, you'll notice that this is in... Where is it? Concert pitch. I think is under utilities. There's something I put in here. Basically, I'm saying I told Finale to write everything out in concert pitch. Don't worry about transposing, other than the octave displacement. So like the bass is octave transposed, but the clarinet would normally have different notes written than what we hear. For reasons for something called transposing. Typically, transposing is done for one or two reasons. One being that the instrument is played by multiple instruments being played by the same person. For example, like the flute and the piccolo are played by the same person. And because of the size differences, the same finger positions on the flute will create a different sound than the same finger positions on a piccolo. Or that's kind of a bad example because they're octaves. But we'll say an oboe. An oboe and an English horn, which are not separated by an octave, but rather, I believe, a perfect fourth or perfect fifth. The same finger position on the English horn will give a different note than the same finger position on an oboe because they're different sizes. So transposing just says, all right, we'll just fix it so that no matter what, the same note you read, rather than having to learn how to read two different sets of notes for two different instruments. I don't know if I'm explaining this properly. But basically, it saves the instrumentalist an issue, the effort. The oboe player sees one note on the staff. They play the note the same way they would on an English horn as they would an oboe, and it works because it's transposed to make it work. Another one is just to help them make more use of the 5 lines and not go too high or too low. Let's see here. So, I was talking about chordal playing. So, right here, the oboe is playing the original melody. But the clarinet is playing a third below. Well, maybe not a full third. But the idea is... I'm a terrible piano player. The thing is that we have the primary melody, and underneath it we have another instrument playing an identical rhythm to the melody. But it's playing different notes, chordal tones, so they form intervals with each other. So we have... Now, a chordal texture would say that this melody will play the same identical rhythm, but stick to strictly chordal tones. So only notes that occur in F major, E major, and A minor. Planing, which is technically what this is, planing means it doesn't care what the chordal tones are. It's just going to make sure it maintains a fairly common interval. So for this, most of it, I basically copied and pasted the melody. I used the transpose function to drop it a minor third. And then if there were any notes that felt crunchy, I just moved them up or down to fix it. But this is a very common technique in spooky music, especially for the woodwinds. You'll hear oboe, clarinet frequently doing this. And then I do this again in the next section. So let's unsolo these. And we will add another 8 measures to this. You're going to hear in my notes over here, I have, here we go. Section 3, we have the oboe and clarinet playing chordal texture. That's technically not chordal, it's similar, but it's a planing texture. And then in section 4, we have the piccolo and flute are planing with each other, and the bassoons are also planing with each other. So if we go over here, let's just solo each of those. We'll solo the oboe, we'll solo the flute, piccolo, clarinet, and we'll solo where are the bassoons? Bassoons. And we'll listen to these two sections. And together, it adds more color, more texture, a little bit more crunch, which is right at home with spooky music. And when we put everything together, we use these different instruments I talked about, pizzicato strings, I believe a little bit of tremolo strings, and the planing, and the harp. Tremolo strings. And so yeah, that's a couple different strategies you've got there. For, if I were to say a process for adding planing, I'd say start with your melody. Melody in the primary instrument. For example, oboe. Copy and paste the melody into a secondary instrument. In this case, clarinet. Then transpose the secondary melody down a minor third. All right, so you take the whole melody, you drop it a minor third, and then once you've done that, go through and fix any problem you hear by moving the pitch up or down in the secondary voice. All right, so if I were to do this over again, let's go up here. Let's say I were to delete this part from the clarinet. I would just copy and paste this. I will go to utilities, transpose. I'd say down a minor third, or just a third diatonically. And say, all right, D and F, yeah, those work together. Let's turn this C into a C sharp. And we'll listen to this real quick. Then let's solo these instruments real quick. Oboe, we'll solo, not mute. Clarinet, we will mute. So I don't like that. Let's change that G to G sharp, which actually makes sense because it's an E under E major. Now I don't like the C all that much. Let's try A. We'll do a G sharp again, because we technically use an E major. I don't like that F either. Let's see. Let's drop that to E, because F and E clash, and this is an A minor chord. I've got E in my other notes, in my other kind of accompanimental instruments. So I'll just drop it to an E. And there we go. We got a nice little planing idea. I'm going to go back to what I did originally because I don't know if this is identical. I don't want to mess with things too much. There we go. And actually, yeah, that actually doesn't look like it's too bad. It looks like it's pretty much a small couple differences, but for the most part, same thing. And yeah, so that's planing. It's a very useful tool for creating spooky music. Oh yeah, I just 321, I just 123 says from The Ring, the movie. Awesome, yeah. Let's look it up, shall we? So Hans Zimmer's The Well from The Ring. This may or may not work. I'm going to pull it up on YouTube, and then you guys need to tell me if you can actually hear it. Hans Zimmer, The Well.
Step into Wix Studio.
Can you hear
where
it?
Creative freedom meets absolute efficiency.
Yep, right off the bat, you've got some oboes doing a planing texture. Awesome. A lot of unnerving kind of synths in the backdrop. Minor keys. Nice little waltz figure, and they come right. So 3/4 time. That's very common in spooky music as well. Tamashi, I am not singing opera. Another planning figure. See? Very common. Ooh. Strings are very... Pizzicato strings. I mentioned that. You hear them plucking. So I need to pause there for a bit because unfortunately I can't show this entire thing or else I'm going to get in trouble with YouTube. YouTube is very strict about copyright laws, and this is Hans Zimmer's actual channel. So obviously he has permission to use it. But what I'm going to do, so far we've seen a lot of stuff that kind of follows what I was saying. All right, minor key. It's in a waltz. Lots of spooky music is in 3/4 time. Pizzicato strings, planing textures. We've got melodies playing the same rhythm, moving in the same basic shape, but not playing the same notes. That's very common as well. So this actually has a greater lesson that you can learn. So while emotion can be played very simply with music, emotion is incredibly easy to capture in music, all right? Because those three things we talked about, valence, size, and movement, that's really all you need to describe the experience of an emotion itself. And what are three things music is very good at portraying and controlling? Valence, size, and movement. So if you can get those three things, you can portray almost basically any emotion you want. But a lot of the questions I get that people ask about emotional music actually have nothing to do with emotions. People will ask me, like, oh, you know how to do emotional music. Can you write spooky music? Spooky's not an emotion. Happy music, it's not an emotion either. Those are kind of separate experiences, sort of like styles, almost, if you will. And a lot of the time, if you set the emotion that you're trying to portray, so if you set those three things, you want like the level of intimacy or size you want for your music. Spooky music is often very intimate and then gets bigger. You've set the valence right, it's darker. And you've set the amount of movement right. Lots of spooky music has kind of waltzes and stuff. Everything else comes down to kind of arrangements and instrumentation styles that are associated with it. And just overall, all in all, that fourth kind of element, I talked about gestures. Where the more you study something, if you study a movie or something that you're trying to portray music with, you study the movie, you study the story, and you just start to get the like instinctive ideas of, oh, let's use planing, or let's use some tremolo strings. Any idea that you kind of get a gut instinct for, go for it. That's a gesture. If you combine it with the other three, it's going to help portray whatever kind of style you're trying to go for. But if you want to get these little idiosyncratic ideas, these little kind of nuances behind portraying specific genres, whether you're like my student yesterday who wanted to learn how to write big band music in the style of like a spy movie, or you want to learn how to write scary music like this from Hans Zimmer's score to The Ring, or whatever you're trying to work on, the best advice I have for you is spend your time, pick 3 or 5 pieces. It should be an odd number because you need to be able to have like a tiebreaker. 3 or 5 pieces that you think are perfectly emblematic of this music. So you could say this piece is one of them. Name at least 2 others that you think are very, very similar and set off the same vibe that you like. Take notes on what, and listen to each one and take notes. What's the valence? Is it dark or bright? Is it kind of neutral? What kind of strategies are used to create movement? You could talk about the waltz kind of figure, the arpeggios here, the pizzicato strings on the beat. What strategies are used for size? Does it start small, get bigger? And those are nice, but really focus on the details. How many layers do you hear? All right, we heard a melody, we heard chords, sustained, and we heard a bass line and staccato chords in the plucked strings. Figure out how many layers you hear at any given point, and make note of what instruments are playing each layer, and then just take note of anything else that sticks out to you. And you're going to do that for each of your 3 or 5 pieces, and then you're just going to look for patterns. All right, what do you find in 2 out of the 3 or 3 out of the 5? Maybe you'll notice that 3 out of the 5 used pizzicato strings. Maybe you noticed that all 5 of them at some point used a planing texture. You don't need to know the terminology, you just notice that they played the melody with different notes at the same time. Just look for patterns and things that repeat in most of the pieces, and that's how you can create your own templates. If you want to learn how to write freaky music, find 3 or 5 freaky pieces of music that you think are similar. What similarities do they have? If you want to learn how to write anime music, whether it's like a shonen, like One Piece or Naruto, or you want to learn something more like Studio Ghibli style, find 3 or 5 pieces that you think are emblematic of that style. What are the similarities? What do they have in common? What instruments do they use? What kind of valence do they have? What strategies do they use for movement, for size? You want to do something for science fiction? Same thing. Just kind of go through. Look for the similarities. That's how you're going to create your templates. That's all the template is a list of the similar kind of strategies that you can use to create those sounds. Hopefully that's helpful. I'm going to skip to the most repeated moment. Most people come back here. Let's go a little bit further. Let's listen to this big kind of climactic part, and then I'll share some notes on that. And then, unfortunately, I can't show the whole thing. I will get in trouble with YouTube. I probably already got this thing demonetized by playing this, but I don't care. Chime box, that's another really big one for creepy music. Oops. Update available. Here we go. Hans Zimmer always goes small and then builds. Harp, hear the harp, a planing harp, and piano. Yeah, so unfortunately I gotta stop there. I'm gonna get in trouble with YouTube if I keep showing it. But yeah, so that I've already kind of done my whole spiel about like creating templates, but these are kind of the things that we talk about. One thing I will add here is chime box or whatever they're called, etc. things. But yeah, so the big ones, I would say, if you want to create spooky music, minor keys, use any and all of these instruments. And the big one is make use of planing textures here and there. Again, that's the idea where they're playing the same rhythm. They've got the same basic shape. They move up at the same time, move down at the same time, but they're playing different notes. The easiest way to do that is to use a chordal texture, which means that your secondary voice just plays the same rhythm. Just it sticks to only notes found in the underlying chords. But really all you gotta do, pick your melody, give it to an original instrument, then copy and paste your melody into a second instrument, and then drop the next instrument down a minor third. That's the most common interval that's usually happens in horror music. It's a third or a tritone if you want to do something super crunchy. And then go through, and if you listen to, and if you hear any notes that stick out as being just kind of not the vibe you're looking for, or just sounding too harsh, you just take your second voice and you always adapt the second voice, not the main voice, because you still want your melody to be noticeable. So go through your second voice and move it, and move the pitch up or down until you find something that works. That's the simplest way to do it. Yes, Tamashi, I do not sing in the bel canto style in chorale or opera. I never really did opera. No, that's a very different kind of singing. So I have sung in a choir before. But no, I guess you're asking, but I said that I got into Berkeley with my audition. My audition piece was Quizás by the cover by Andrea Bocelli. No, I wasn't. I can sing an operatic style piece. I'm a tenor, and I can sing kind of like I was a wedding singer for a long time. I sing lots of songs like that. I also did the prayer, the but that I sung the prayer at a wedding once, the version with like Celine Dion and Andrea Bocelli. So I sang the Italian part. But no, it's not that. That's not typically the style I'll typically gravitate towards. But we'll see. I'm still coming up with a short list because again, I've got to do something for the 20,000 subscriber markers. But let's see here. I just 321. I just 123. You are really good at teaching. Thank you very much. I really enjoy it. I really love doing these kind of things and sharing ideas. And I think I've had a lot of experience teaching in the past, which is nice. I taught when I was a grad student. I taught a class on the psychology of creativity, and I loved that job. And yeah, I do really enjoy teaching. One of my dreams is to teach music at the University of Michigan. I'm just putting that out there because I want it to happen. For a bunch of reasons. I love the University of Michigan. That's where I went to grad school and undergrad. It's a great music program, and when I realized I didn't want to be a therapist, I wanted to go into music. I tried auditioning to the university's music program twice, just because I was teaching. So I knew that if I did a master's program, it would be free as long as I kept teaching. But I got rejected twice, couldn't make it in. But I had some wonderful professors who still let me take some classes with them while I was studying to be a therapist. So I loved studying there. I loved the professors I had. And I would love to go back and teach there. And what was I saying? I did apply over the summer. I got told that they were looking for a lecturer. So not a professor, just a lecturer to teach a class called Music Composition for Non-Music Majors, which I thought, hey, that's me. That's perfect. I'd love that. I did apply. I never heard back from them, which was a bummer. But you never know. I've got my textbook coming out soon, hopefully. So hopefully once that's on shelves, that'll give me a little bit more legitimacy behind my name and not just the credits I have composing and this thing on here on YouTube. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Winfield Taylor, you have a very nice channel. Thank you. I've been enjoying you a bit on functional harmony and some of the other playlists. Thank you. My pleasure. I'm really glad you like it. I think I've got a nice little channel too. I really love what I do. I love teaching. My earlier playlists were very much structured with the idea of teaching a class. So my playlist on harmony, my playlist on melody writing, I've got a couple playlists on orchestration. Those were all kind of structured with the idea I wanted to watch people to be able to have a place to study online for free. To just say, if you don't know how to write chord progressions, here's a playlist structured like a class. So I'm glad you're finding it useful, and yeah, thank you. I really like it when people, I love it when people tell me that they find my videos useful and helpful. That's the biggest thing you can do, because I'm not a very good editor. I'm not a very good, I don't like the whole like editing and putting videos together bit. That's the part I like the least about YouTube. But I love teaching. I love sharing ideas. I love writing music. And so when people tell me that my videos are useful, it just makes me really happy. So thank you. Tamashi, how much do you have left? Saw and read your stories. How much do I have left? I'm not sure what you mean. How much do I have left? Yeah, I'm not sure, unfortunately. How much time do I have left? For what? For the stream, probably only a couple more minutes. I usually do like 1 hour streams. That sounds kind of ominous, Tamashi, asking me how much time I have left. I can see no reason why you wouldn't be able to do that. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I've got some contacts at the university still. I'm thinking the textbook will help. I'm thinking that I'm trying to teach some master classes at community colleges and universities on emotions and music. I've got a couple meetings at a couple local colleges in the area where I am right now, which I'm not going to say because I don't like putting too much information out there. But there are some local there's some nearby universities and community colleges that I have contacts at. I'm very good at meeting people. So I've met some people. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to talk about doing some workshops, some master classes. I feel like if I can build my resume a bit better, I'll have a better chance at kind of like squeezing my way into U of M. So yeah, we'll see someday. It's my goal. I really, and of course, there's part of me that just likes the flair of the dramatic and can be a little. My sister always told me I would be a Slytherin, in like the Harry Potter houses because I'm a very kind of ambitious person and I have not a mean streak. I wouldn't call it vindictive, but it's almost like a soft vindictiveness. Where I'm not gonna lie, one of the allures of teaching at U of M is I would love to teach at a school that rejected me as a student for the music program. So again, like I love the school, I love the program, and I don't say that that's not my primary motivator, but I'm not gonna say it's not a motivator. So that'd be fun. Tamashi, if you can't find the score, you can just search background track or muted vocal from the original using AI tools. Oh, thank you. That is a good idea, because man, you were really wanting me to do this cover. I do think if it came down to a song I think would be best, my top choice for the cover for 20,000 subscribers and revealing my angelic singing voice that's surprisingly not nearly as nasally as my talking voice is. No, yeah, if I had my pick of songs I would love to do, I would love to do Fly. Like Flying by Cody Fry. I had no idea who Cody Fry was. But my sister reached out and said that she got her hands on a couple tickets that he was coming to Ann Arbor of all places, which is where the University of Michigan is. So I'm like, I'm always up for a trip to Ann Arbor, and I'm always up for spending time with my siblings. So yeah, I took her up on it. I went to it, and he blew me away. The concert was incredible. I loved it, and my favorite piece by him is Flying. So I would love to do that. That was the original plan. I couldn't find any sheet music, so I probably just will look for instrumental videos on YouTube or something. But we'll see. I've still got 500 subscribers to go before I reach 20,000. And I'm not going to start practicing or preparing to sing or anything until I hit that 20,000 subscriber threshold. To be honest, I would have completely forgotten about it if you hadn't reminded me, Tamashi. And yes, it is amazing. It's an amazing piece. So, last couple seconds, here's what we're going to do. We are going to listen to my waltz one last time, just so we can have, let's do column, let's do current spread only. Let's see your page. I want to just do column style. I want to just do not 2 pages. I want to just do 1 page at a time. How do I do that? Again, I am not as fluent with finale as I should be. Okay, loose leaf. There we go, loose leaf. There we go. That works. That's what I wanted. Let's listen to the music one last time. And it's about 1.5 minutes long. We'll get some ideas. If you have ideas for what I should do to it, what I should add, how I can, different moments that you notice something sticking out and not kind of meshing well, let me know in the comments. I would love your input. And as always, this is your last call for questions. All right. So we're going to listen to the music. By the time we go to the end, I will answer any questions that are written. I will answer any questions that get written while I'm answering questions. But if there are no questions by the time this is done, we're calling it a day. All right? So here we go. Spooky Waltz, Unnamed, by yours truly. Oops. Hold up. That's embarrassing. I forgot we had been working with a specific section. Let's listen to the whole thing. And again, the top line is the sketch if you just want to follow along with that. Awesome. There we go. We're done. Jack mentioned that there's an ad. I had no idea they put ads in the middle of his live stream. Is that new? I thought that it was only like ads at the beginning and possibly at the end. I don't know. Also, a comment that I missed from you, Jack. You talked about the articulations that I used to add a lot of personality to the melody. Yes, very much. And that came from like the sketching process. So when I was originally writing the melodies in Cubase, I would write it out and then I would play around with it on the piano and play around with it and see what personality seemed to naturally come from there. I tend to just allow whatever comes naturally playing to dictate my articulations. I don't think too heavily about it. But awesome. So yeah, before we end here, one second, got a question from Winfield Taylor. What is the intent of switching from scales in the xylophone to presumably repetition across the level of chords? Is that to introduce variety in the xylophone part? Let's see, what section from scales in the xylophone to repetition across levels of chords? So the scales in the xylophone, that was technically, those just kind of went with the chords. So that's what the scales and the piano were doing. That's their own separate layer. And the purpose of that, adding it, was to add more complexity. So one of my guiding principles while I was arranging this was every time a theme got repeated, or every time a section moved forward, I would add more instruments and at least one new layer. But once I switched to a different theme, I would strip it back down. I would get smaller. So here we start very small, flute with pizzicato strings. The theme repeats, so now I added the violin 1 and violin 2 on the melody in octaves. Added size, I added a bit more instruments to the mix on the bass line, and I added one new layer, which was the xylophone and the piano on kind of an ostinato run figure. So that adds a bit more interesting movement, but in the third section, I've got a new melody. So I stripped things back down. The melody is now being played by the oboe and clarinet, while the harp does just kind of some runs. So I still want it to be bigger than it was, so not too small, but I then move it down to just sustained strings. Sol ponticello, if anything else, which Note Performer, which is the plugin I use for Finale's performance, doesn't have a sol ponticello sound, but it's a lot more glassier, kind of freaky kind of sound. So the overall size goes down. But swapping from, is that what you're talking about, or are you talking about a specific section? Each one was basically just to add a little bit of shift. So here, the idea of this xylophone going from scales to this is actually an embellished melody. So here we've got the actual melody being played by solo viola. So here, I have a counter melody being played by the oboe. I am not a good piano player. I have never pretended to be otherwise. Now what's interesting is the xylophone is no longer playing runs here. What it's doing is playing an embellished part of the counter melody, which means it's playing the same pitches at the same point. We still have this E to A. But instead of playing a sustain like the oboe, it plays some additional repetitions. I'm a terrible piano player, so let's just play this. So this is 33 to 40. Let's swap this. 33, and I'm going to solo the oboe and the xylophone. You're going to notice that they're actually playing the same line. So I just swapped the role that the xylophone's playing. It's not playing a scale or run, it's playing a counter melody. Just an embellished variation of it. So let's solo the oboe, and let's solo the xylophone. And that actually pointed out a mistake that I had in this. So let's change that. That should be a B, not an A. But yeah, it's just playing the counter melody. The same part, but it's playing an embellished part. So this is what's called a heterophonic texture. A heterophonic texture is a specific texture for arranging a melody. You take the melody and you double it with a variation of itself. There are typically two basic types. You have an embellished melody, which can be a rhythmic embellishment like this, which plays the same pitch, just more rhythmic notes. Or it can be an embellished melody, or like a colorful embellished, where you hit the right notes at the right point, but in between you're doing all other kind of crazy stuff. You're going to different pitches, scales, arpeggios, whatever you want. And the second type is a simplified, where you just play less notes. So a simplified version would be just if the xylophone just hit this E, and it just hit the F, then D. A rhythmically simplified yet embellished kind of combo would be if it hit the E and just repeated it, and then the F and repeated it, and the D and repeated it. But this is what I wanted. I wanted to bring the xylophone in on the counter melody. I felt that playing just the counter melody by itself didn't have the same kind of impact, and we can listen to that here. I felt, yeah, I could do that, but I didn't like the way it sounded. I didn't like the way it worked. I liked the extra movement. For me, a spooky xylophone is one that's moving around like a skeleton. So I played the counter melody and just embellished it. This is also something very common in the Harry Potter soundtracks by John Williams, is his ostinatos and string runs will just be embellishments of the melody. He'll start with the melody, he'll double it in the violins, then he'll shorten the note values and just fill the space in between them. It's another very common kind of strategy you can use to add more kind of runs, arpeggios, flourishes, what have you. Raven, thank you for the stream. I've learned a lot in just an hour. Thank you. I'm really glad to hear that. I love just knowing that I'm helping people, because I struggled a lot trying to learn this stuff. When I started out as a composer, like I said, I had never written any music in my life. I was in my 20s already. I was in grad school, and I felt like I was struggling. And so that was a lot of the motivation behind creating the channel, is I know that there's more people like me. I feel like composing is gatekept so horrifically. It's this idea that you're either born... Oh, it's snowing outside. Oh, I hate that. I'm sorry. That's the ADHD in me. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, gatekeeping. Yes, composing is gatekept. It's awful. It's almost like people think if you aren't born with the talent, you can't learn. But it's not. That's not true. It's a skill like anything else. And so that's what I try to help with. So I'm glad you've learned. Thank you. Winfield, yes, this is the area. Awesome, thank you. And I'm glad it was helpful. Let's see, was there anything else? Oh yeah, just a couple kind of announcements. So I'm working on another podcast episode. Thank you for those of you who have reached out about that. I'm really enjoying the podcast. I don't know if any of you guys have listened to it. If you have, go to it. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Audibles. And we also have the video recordings here on YouTube. It's really fun. It's me and one of my best friends and my roommate, actually. I'm a trained therapist who became a professional musician, and he was actually a trained musician who became a professional therapist. So we kind of like swapped, and we both love movies. So we'll watch a movie together, and then we'll each pick 3 scenes that we think young composers can learn from, and we'll dissect them. He'll talk a lot about like the emotional side and how composers can better understand emotions and psychology and storytelling. I talk about like the music and kind of stuff. We've done, I think, like 6 episodes. The first one was Prisoner of Azkaban, then Spirited Away, then Interstellar. Then we've done Princess Mononoke, but we couldn't post the video. YouTube hated the video for whatever reason. I tried like 5 times to upload it and didn't come. Oh, it was 4. Tried 4 times, got blocked every time. But it is on Spotify. We've done Avengers Infinity War. And what was the 6th one? I think the 6th one was... I can't remember. But right now we're working on a 2-part episode of Lord of the Rings Return of the King Extended Edition. So we're both huge geeks over that. So we're going to be recording that tomorrow, and it'll be up as soon as I can get it. But we're playing around with a new idea, too, about a new kind of live stream. That would be a longer format, like a 4 or 5 hour thing where he and I are just on live here, and we talk about a season of a TV show or something. So he's never seen Avatar. So we're toying with the idea of watching season 1 of Avatar: Air Last Airbender, and just basically having a long stream where we just all talk about it. Geek out about our favorite scenes. People can ask questions about different music or different scenes and stuff like that. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know. And yeah, I think that's about it. Kind of announcement-wise. Welcome, Matt. Welcome. Oh, bummer. You got here in like the last second. If anyone has any questions, throw them down below. But I'm not seeing anything. So I think I'm going to call it a day, guys. Happy Halloween. All right. And for those of you who are celebrating tomorrow, Feliz Dia de los Muertos. All right. I will be celebrating. I've been making beans, rice, and chicken and tortillas all day today. I love cooking. I'm one of the only siblings in my family that learned my abuelita's recipes because of my line of work in the last couple of years of her life. I was able to help be one of her caregivers because I have a very flexible schedule. That's oversharing. You don't need to know that, but I did share it. That's just kind of part of ADHD. But yeah, so happy Halloween, everybody. I hope you have a great day. I hope you stay safe, have fun. I will see you all next week or in the next video or whenever I'm on here again. All right, have a good one. Bye-bye.